Hello, and before we get into chapter 28 of Checkmate, I can regurgitate my history no problem, but I've come into problems when it comes to marketing and advertising and strategies and the 100 other things that go along this self-publishing route. I really do. Cue 5 million people trying to scam me out of every which way but loose automatically. However, there is a handful of diamonds in the rough that do appear from time to time, some remarkable groups and some amazing pages. One of these I want to mention very, very briefly before we start. Whatever your level of publishing, have a look at, and I hope I'm pronouncing her surname properly, Lacey Lifers, LACYLIEFFERS. Facebook is where I first came across her. She is giving out a wealth of information through several groups and her page for absolute zero, and obviously she's advertising her website as well. Her website is Black Fox Marketing, and if you want to check that out, it's blackfoxmarketing.ca/about. Will tell you all about her directly from her website. I have over 16 years of sales and marketing experience helping entrepreneurs and national and global businesses strengthen their brands, gain more visibility, create an experience for their audience and clients, attract more leads, and generate more revenue. Over 8 years ago, I followed my passions and founded my first company, an editing and marketing firm, where I helped authors shape and share their stories to their readers, and I'm so proud to say that over 90% of the books I work with achieved bestseller status, with 3 of them winning global awards in their categories, so I'm no stranger to coaching authors and writing, publishing and marketing books. Then, over 3 years ago, I founded Black Fox Marketing so I could expand my marketing service offerings. I'm now dedicated to helping authors immortalize their legacy and sell more books. Seriously, check her out on our website, check her out on the Facebook. There is a wealth of information out there. And under that, guys, leads me to mailing lists. If anything I've been picking up from her was 101 ways to try and get the book's name out there and to get mentioned and to get people interacting more and more. And it's not a process I've ever been down. I always just wanted to tell my story. I always just wanted to write. But I can't get that to a bigger audience if I don't have that mailing list, if I don't have that communication. And so my contact details: TracyDaily82@yahoo.com, TracyDaily82@yahoo.com. What will you receive? You receive first notification of anything that I release now. So what I will do is I'll email you directly. Any of the new podcasts, any of the new books, any of the new stories, you'll be the first to know about it. You can also follow me on Instagram, Tracy Rose Daily, and Facebook, Tracy Daily. My website, Mr. Tracy Daily, WordPress.com. MrTracyDaily.wordpress.com. Aside from this, when Checkmate's finished, we're going to be needing somewhere to go with this cast that's not just pulling up stories and giving regurgitation of my take on murder and manslaughter. I want to find the people that haven't been hurt. I want to find the survivors of murder and manslaughter. I am in, must be 20 groups. Siblings have murdered siblings, parents have murdered children, support after murder and manslaughter. The list is endless. 2 people per week are killed by a partner figure. 2 people a week. It's a ridiculous number. I can probably name 10 off the top of my head that have gone public, many of which will go public in a big capacity and then zero, because they have so many questions and they find it so traumatic naturally to relive what they've been through. Well, I'm looking for the guys, the diamonds in the rough, the ones in between that want to share their story. It doesn't matter if it has an amazingly inspirational ending. It doesn't matter if you're at the point where you've gone through all the processes of grieving, but you still come back to it every year. It doesn't matter if you think you're regurgitating other people's stories. What matters is the more you tell these stories, the more it actually assists other people. I've looked at Richard McGann's, I've looked at the Dave Pelters, and even mentioned on a post I just did on Dude's Reddit, actually, I like the Reddit forums, where I mentioned Jerry Springer, because that show made my life seem normal. And when we share the more traumatic stories, when we show the more devastating effects of these things, other people are looking at it and they'll relate if they've been through it. And because you've got through it, gives them that little bit more confidence that they can too. So yeah, get in touch. Anything that I've covered through my books, Tracy's Story and Checkmate, if you have something that relates in a capacity, whether a lesser or higher degree or a similar level, I mean, at certain points, I've just done 2 chapters where I speak about Franklin, the schizophrenic. You're going through something similar, you've been through something similar, you know something that can help people who've been through something similar, you have a story to tell, so as you're leaving that story for your children or your family, so as it makes a difference when you're not here anymore, get in touch. I'll read it out on cast. If I think it's going to be in any way suitable, I'll get you on cast, whichever way you want to do it. But you can only do that through my email, through my socials, and that's where they are. Thank you, Lacey. Believe it or not, I don't like asking for help. I don't like going, hey, sign up to this, hey, join this, hey, give me a review. It feels like I'm trying to take something. I didn't start this to take something. I started this to give something. I started this to share a story. So, you guys decide. Let me know what you think of Lacey Lifers. Let me know what you think of Black Fox Marketing. Let me know what you think of Tracy's Story and Checkmate. Better yet, don't just let me know, let everybody else know. Now, thank you very much. Chapter 28, Checkmate. I'd had a good year of relative quiet. We'd got our own private accommodation. I'd even got a social worker to assist me to get my care records sent, and we had a routine. The flat was clean and tidy. We'd go to her mother's once a week, and although it wasn't perfect by a long shot, it was routine, and that routine held some form of safety for me. MJ kept contact with Paul, who I totally refused to have in the flat at all. MJ's reason was that if anything went wrong between her and I, he would be around as he'd always been before, when she was at her mum's. I explained he hadn't done a damn thing about her being beaten by her mother, though he had, to which she exploded. Franklin slowly stopped calling because MJ wouldn't answer, and every time I answered and spoke to him for a while, MJ would find a reason to have panic attacks. I was getting to the point where I'd rather avoid the conflict than take the shouting. I justified it all as manageable. I couldn't possibly walk away. Wenzel had, and that wasn't right. Men don't just walk away. They handle things. They help fix them. In the early days, we went shopping together in the car. We'd picked up our money and generally go to her parents. However, as the weeks went on, she found more and more reasons to stay inside, and more reasons to panic, even thinking about going out, to which I'd get the abuse. I figured it was a normal part of her anxiety and depression, and that on some level it was my own fault for not being able to assist with it. After all, Wenzel couldn't help my mum. What chance did I have, really? I assumed the stress of Franklin's behaviour didn't help her. Add to that, she'd never really dealt with her mum's abuse. It's no wonder she had issues. Perhaps if I gave her time and just rode it out, she'd be fine. I couldn't turn my back on her. I was too stubborn. I'd get her help, she'd become more confident. She'd sort it out, and then she'd be okay. It seemed the only thing that did bring her happiness was seeing Mojo, the black and white cat which lived at her mother's. She often described him as her only friend. We spoke to the landlady and agreed the cat could move in if we could convince her parents to let him go. After a while, she started to feel safe again. She told me herself the car was a safe place, and so travel was fine as long as she was in the car, and the home was safe, as long as she could have whatever furniture she wanted wherever she wanted. If something was changed or in a different place, she got anxious and felt like her world was falling apart. Then she'd start shouting at me like it was my fault. She'd still shake at the door, but I was pleased. I was actually proud of her. All the positives had paid off, and I kept up my relationship pretext in the hope of leaving by making her so confident that she was self-sufficient. This wasn't low self-esteem on my part. I genuinely wanted her to be happy, so I could say I did it. I didn't walk away like Wenzel did. I guess in some way I was trying to rescue my mother by doing something Wenzel wasn't able to do. I wanted to beat him at something. I needed to prove myself. I boosted MJ at every opportunity. "You did great today, well done. Aren't you proud of yourself?" Sometimes she thought I was an arsehole. Other times she accepted it. Eventually she started to use it and started to feel better. She sat in front of the PC as soon as she was home, and that would be her for the rest of the time. She'd not move until it was time to sleep. "Coffee?" she'd ask. She never brewed up. She cooked once a blue moon, unless it was just for her. She was still on the Samonto, but she hadn't taken the Valium since she'd moved in, and she was off her inhalers altogether. We didn't play games or decorate or do anything together really, which I just put down to her depression. We lived in the same place, and that was pretty much her run around. Intimacy was rare by choice, and somehow it felt wrong. I couldn't figure out how, but it was never quite right, no matter who had instigated it. Her life was basically AOL chat rooms, or an online multiplayer game where she could chat to other people. I knew from experience that online she came across as the perfect person. Face to face, not so much. My email address was a sub-email of her account, which she was worried I'd run off with another woman, which to be fair I could understand her concern. I was living with Courtney when I met MJ. However, things started to become more noticeable, like the fact she started giving all my money to her out of choice at first, to help pay towards the bed and breakfast that she's initially funded. Since then it became habit. If I mentioned it or refused to pay, she got aggressive. Not physically at first, but shouting and swearing, throwing things around. There was always an atmosphere of something going wrong. Her favourite line was that I didn't care about her. I was getting used to it. However, walking the line was starting to bug me too. For instance, I had a pay-as-you-go mobile so people could call me, but if I put money on it, she'd want to know who I'd spent it on, or who I was talking to. It became easier to simply lose the friends from the past, and so that's what I did. I had a pay-as-you-go phone that I received calls on. For MJ, what was more is she had me believing it was perfectly normal, that it was somehow my choice. I guess in a way it was. I went on what I can only describe as a journey of self-discovery. It wasn't even intentional. Through trying to help NJ with her stuff, and after what happened with Franklin, I noticed there were things I didn't like about myself that were getting to me, and I couldn't change it. It was normal to take care of the family as the man of the house. However, I didn't want MJ to take control of everything. I wanted to go to college. I wanted a job. I wanted friends, and this just wasn't possible for me. I was getting agitated, later angry with myself for wanting these things. I looked around me for ways to throw my head out of the rut I'd got myself into, and all I could see was a small and smaller circle of hope around me. I looked in the same place I always looked when I got low. I looked towards the past. Where was Jonathan, Jodie and Caroline? What were they doing? They always cropped up, and I always chucked them back down inside, because I never knew what they wanted. Caroline had contact with both Jodie and Jonathan, and said they wanted nothing to do with me, because I'd got back to Wenzel years ago, and I couldn't get a relationship with Caroline, because I was so pissed off she wouldn't facilitate contact. Hell, if she didn't care enough to help with contact, why on earth would I want a relationship with her? The fact she was my sister, and I'd done my own wrongs in the past, hurt even more. I spent nights searching them online when MJ was asleep. It was a way to not go to bed, and a way to have my time. I found where they lived, went to school, worked. I found my brother had a child I'd not known about. I broke down. Let's face it, nobody that's alive cares in the slightest, including myself. What did I want from life? I wanted to know why my mother was killed. Maybe if I found out, maybe if I got all the information together and documented it, maybe if I wrote down everything for my family, my brother and sisters, maybe, just maybe, they'd not have to go through the things I had to go through to get that information. Maybe they'd have more questions that would bring them in touch with me, and maybe then I'd have some kind of family. I felt the tears burn my face as I pressed and held the power button on the big home computer. It died, and the silence filled the living room around me. I told MJ the following day I was going to look at all the things from my past. I'd make the family tree and go from there into each of their histories until I got everything. Then I'd document it and give it to my brother and sisters. MJ, in typical fashion, said it was a waste of time. We didn't have the money to chase dreams or go to college or to do a course. Besides, you've got no qualifications. How do you expect to be able to find anything out with no qualifications? I can't just request information about people, you know. She had me believing she was right. So I told her I was depressed. I was going to see a therapist. She said it was stupid, that I didn't need it as I could talk to her. I told her I was seeing a therapist. I booked an appointment. The air in the room changed the moment I put the phone down. "Are you trying to kill me?" she screamed, sucking on her inhaler. "What?" I asked her. "Calm down," I said, stepping back. She leaned forward into my face and took another gulp of whatever the blue inhaler was. "First you stay up all night talking to women, then you make an appointment to see a therapist. Do you think I'm fucking stupid? Do I look fucking stupid?" She was tapping the side of my head hard with her finger. I stepped back again into the hall. "Don't do that," I said, shaking my head. She moved forwards. "Oh, you don't like that?" "Well, I don't like being lied to. What do you think about that?" she said, tapping my head again. I stepped back and sidestepped around her, so I was back in the living room. I felt trapped. "MJ, you're talking shit. I was looking up stuff about my family. Chill the fuck out." She sat down and started swearing to herself under her breath, then routinely slamming her large forearms on the cheap wood chip desk we had. I plain stopped sleeping in the bedroom, started sleeping on the sofa instead, making the excuses I couldn't sleep with her with the fan on all night. She had it on because of her asthma, which only spiked up again since she was so angry with me for whatever she'd decided I'd done this time. A week of this, and she decided the bed wasn't helping her sleep because of her weight, so she had to sleep on the sofa. I happily gave it up and slept on the floor in front of the desk. I knew if I went to bed she'd join me, but there was no way she'd sleep on a hard floor. Me, however, I felt at home on the floor. I decided if I was going to get into that amount of trouble for talking to people I'd not been speaking to, I might as well be actually talking to people and get the roast in anyway. So I got in touch with my old friend Louise, and I told her everything. She was naturally surprised, said it wasn't like the happy-go-lucky me she'd known as a kid. Although I was a little weird even then, I wasn't someone who'd let people walk all over me. She was right, but what could I do? I figured I'd just be honest with MJ and she'd throw me out, and then hey, I'd get my own place or something. I was scared, but fuck it, what was the worst that could happen? MJ got up in the late morning. Once I'd made her food and drink, I pulled a chair from the dining table and moved it alongside her PC chair at the desk, and told her what a great catch-up I'd had with Louise, how she was getting on with her boyfriend. I was making conversation. I wasn't saying anything which was in poor taste, and she burst into tears. "You tell me you've been up all night talking to an old friend, then you tell me you've had a great time." I held her as she cried, and explained that it wasn't like that. Louise is over 100 miles away, and we were only ever friends. "I hate you, don't touch me," she screamed, storming off. She returned with an empty bag and dropped it by the front door. "I'm leaving. I've had enough." I was sick of the arguments, sick of the borderline fighting, and I was depressed myself. I couldn't care less anymore. "See ya," I offered. "See ya? Fucking see ya? I tell you I'm leaving and you say see ya?" She was screaming and jumping up and down. The floor was banging as she did. She whipped her inhaler out and gave me the usual speech about trying to kill herself while she puffed on it. Trying to kill her while she puffed on it. "No, but I won't stop you from leaving. That's your choice." We'd established from some of the history's paperwork we'd got of my mum's that she was trying to leave Wenzel. She'd actually made a phone call the night before to an aunt, said she would go and stay with her till they could sort something out with the social services. Wenzel must have talked her into staying, at least the night, because she was found in her pyjamas and covered in blood-stained duvet with no sign of a struggle. So no, there's no way I'd stop NJ leaving, and she knew it. I would never make myself like Wenzel in any way that I could choose not to be. Hell, when they said I needed glasses like him, I grew my hair down my back to ensure I looked nothing like him. "But you're supposed to care. I trusted you," she stormed. "You hurt me. I hate you," she added, looking for a response. I felt guilty. I couldn't help her, but the realisation had hit. Only she could help her. I could try, but she had to help too. I explained to her I do care. My mother tried to leave and my father killed her. I won't control any woman. You want to go, you go. She threw her bag outside the doorway and walked out. I watched her walk down the road on a mobile phone from the window. Oddly, she didn't look back or appear concerned about being outside at all, and she was back inside 10 minutes. "I'm sorry, I love you," she said. I was gobsmacked, but I chose to work with it. "Okay, how can we make you feel better so when I talk to friends you don't take it as a personal attack?" I said calmly. "Well, maybe if I knew about her," she asked, and so I told her everything I knew about Louise. I skipped the parts where we used to walk with linked arms, or that I'd asked her out that third or fourth time. "Okay, well if you don't talk to her I'll be fine," she told me. "What? You can't do that. I've got no issue with you keeping in touch with David, who's an ex, or Paul. This isn't Louise's problem, it's yours." MJ was immediately up in my face. "I pay the bills, I gave you money for a hotel, I took you in. I stayed with Franklin because of you." She was crying and prodded me hard in the chest. I moved away. "MJ, calm down." She had fire in her eyes. I realised she had every intention of turning me into her father. It was only then that the penny dropped. Over the next 2 years, I wrote off to every connection to do with my mother's death. It meant I wasn't concentrating on MJ's abuse, which had escalated. It meant I wasn't concentrating on how my life had turned out this way, and why I was slowly turning into her father. And it meant I was getting some sort of answers to why my father thought it was right to murder my mother. By this time I wasn't questioning if it was manslaughter or not. I was convinced it was murder, regardless of what the courts had said. I had the coroner's report, the transcripts, the therapist's letters, social services reports. I even have Wenzel's medical records. I had statements from the scene of the crime officers. What I didn't have was a transcript from the courts itself, as it had been over 5 years since the court date, so those were lost. On the telephone I was clear and confident. As far as A1 was concerned, I was a fully functional person researching his mother's death for his own personal use. Away from the phone I ran around after MJ automatically, and would sit in the bath staring at the wall whilst the water went cold for as many hours as MJ would allow, before she wanted food or to use the bathroom. Her leg had grown to humongous proportions due for lymphedema, and it was up to me to massage cream into it morning and night because she was so big that she couldn't reach. This is what happens if you allow yourself to get to 28 stone. You don't exercise or eat properly. I don't remember when her prodding turned to slaps, but it had. I don't remember where slaps turned to fists, but they had. And I accepted it, and usually closed the door until she'd calmed down. I'd find her later on having gone back to taking Valium. At one point I told her if she was a guy I'd have dropped her already. It didn't help. "Hit me!" she screamed. I walked away, and my compliance became automatic. If she asked if I wanted to go to her mother's, it wasn't a question, unless I wanted to be awake for 3 nights arguing about it. I'd literally said no once, and she kept waking me up every time I fell asleep to continue the arguing, tell me how much I hated her parents. She was right, but I hadn't admitted it. Her parents turned her into her. Of course I hated them. She was rightly obsessed that I didn't love her because I wouldn't sleep in the same room as her. I used the same excuse she'd used to jump on benefits. My shoulder hurts to sleep on the bed, so I sleep on the floor. It's not personal, I promise. It was. I always had an interest in psychology. It was my birthday. MJ had bought me a book. It was The Diary of the Warrior of Light by Paulo Coelho, and she'd written inside it, "Thanks for everything you've done for me. You make me feel special every day. I love you." She bought me a key ring, a tobacco tin, and a penknife, all engraved with my initials on them. I kept them in the desk where the PC was. I didn't camp anymore, so I had no use for the knife, and didn't want the tobacco tin damaged. MJ had ballooned up to nearly 30 stone. Her leg was getting bigger and bigger, where she'd sat for such long periods of time. I was still 10 stone flat, because whenever I was angry I went down to the punch bag in the garage and let loose on that. MJ got piles shortly after her legs started to swell. She spent 3 nights sat at the edge of the bed watching TV with frozen peas beneath her. She'd got to the point where she'd given up on everything. She wouldn't wash or dry her hair. Of course it had to be coloured, so that fell to me too. I kept giving her the positives in the hope that one day she'd catch on. I turned it into a game whilst doing her hair. I'm strong and confident. I'm happy and healthy. I'm bright and bubbly. She never followed suit. She just didn't care. My therapy wasn't really helping me. At least at the time I didn't feel like it was. His name was David. He was an absolute diamond, but I just sat there talking about the past for the first few sessions, and I was shocked and surprised as the fellow was therapist. I had a bit of connecting dots, and sometimes those dots aren't the picture that make up the problem. In this instance he was decent enough to keep asking me what I thought the problem was instead of speculating, which I really liked about him, and eventually after several sessions he got to the root of the problem. "How's your relationship with MJ?" he asked. I sat in silence for the remaining 4 minutes like I had as a child, and then left promising to see him next week. The following week I noticed he wore a suede jacket, as he'd had a smoke outside before I turned up. He also had matching shoes in colour but in leather. He didn't waste any time. "You were telling me about your relationship with MJ." I wasn't, but it was a good attempt. "Nice shoes, I've got a pair like that," I said, thinking about Wenzel's shitty suede jacket and avoiding the subject of MJ. "Did you come here to talk about my shoes?" I didn't expect the directness and my head shot up. I looked him straight in the eye. He'd never come across threatening before, and had not expected it here. I saw no threat in his eyes, but we both realised something in that moment. Firstly, if I was looking for it, then he now knew I'd been hurt physically before, otherwise I'd not be looking for signs of it. and that 2, he knew how to get my attention and wouldn't be messed around. I had 2 choices. I could tell him to go fuck himself. I could trust the guy. Either way, he'd brought the conversation to a head, and the rest was up to me. I eyeballed him. Let's see how much balls this guy actually has, if he wants to go rooting around inside my head. He ignored me and took a sip of his drink, and then he looked back at me. I can't help you if you don't want to talk about it. Isn't your job supposed to be able to help me to help myself? I fired back. Yeah, I'm not a dumbass who needs help. I might have no qualifications, but I read. No, my job is to see if you want to help yourself. Can you tell me why you don't want to talk about MJ? He was good, and he was getting to me. I wanted to smoke. I'm done. If you'll have me, I'll see you next week. I got up and left right there. I figured before I actually dropped MJ in the shit, I should at least make a go trying to sort things out. What if we both went to a college course like together? She could see it's not all sleeping around, and maybe she'd make friends, and maybe she'd get confidence so I could leave. I pitched it to her without the leaving part. She agreed, as long as I did a course with her, and she picked it, we could do it together. So we both signed up for a British Sign Language course. We practiced online and both found out we were actually okay. Then we went to the college and signed up. It went really well until halfway through the first lesson when MJ declared in front of everyone, "She doesn't like me," pointing to the tutor. I apologised to the tutor and explained to MJ she was imagining things. MJ refused to go anymore because the tutor didn't like her, and so I couldn't go anymore either. Naturally, it was my fault she was stressed and highly embarrassed in the classroom by the tutor who had looked at her. And so I had to pay for both courses, because she didn't get a qualification out of it. I refused and argued with her once we'd got home. We went back and forward for at least 2 hours debating and talking, until she said she was going to kill herself because I don't love her. Apparently if I loved her, I'd understand and pay for the courses and complain to the college. Naturally, I talked her out of taking pills and sat with her until she calmed down. I gave her all the silly answers that she wanted, and that I'd not do the courses. I'd pay for them, and I'd help her draft a complaint letter to the college as well. One last shot, I said to myself, one last shot before my appointment with David. I'll try and help her and myself. If it doesn't work or she goes sick on me, I'll tell David everything, and he'll advise me from there. I told her I wanted to do a psychology course. I wanted to work with people who'd been through what I had. She said it wasn't possible. We didn't have the money for the paper, the pens. I walked into the bedroom and took £2,000 cash from her bottom drawer. I know how much we spend. I know how much you save. This is spare cash. We can get it from this for less than that tote. She snatched the little red tin from me and hit the monitor with it. That's mine! She was instantly in depressive mode again. I'd had enough. We argued for about half an hour, and then I made a brew. This was a new game. I wasn't sure how it was supposed to play out, but I didn't like it. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. Oh, I'd heard it 100 times before. I was sick of playing. I opened the drawer and pulled out the biggest knife with a serrated edge I could find and placed it on the side in front of her. Here, use this. Those scissors are blunt as fuck. I was deadpan. I went back to my coffee. She ran into the bedroom crying and lay on the bed for an hour in tears. When the sobbing stopped, I went and asked her if she'd calmed down yet. She rolled over. Something shone in the light. It was 4 sleeves of cocodamol. They were empty. Chapter 29. I called the doctors, who said to take her to hospital immediately. Of course she wouldn't go. I called an ambulance. The neighbour, a little elderly man from next door called Jim, heard the complaints from MJ and tried to calm her down, to no avail. The ambulance said they'd not have the facilities to get her down the stairs or the chair or stretcher due to her weight and the layout of the flat. She wouldn't walk down and refused to walk down despite having done so every single time we'd been up and down those stairs before. And so all they could do was inform me to get lots of fluids into her. She loved the attention. "I'm not going to the hospital, you can't make me." I told her she was being an idiot. This wasn't about arguments or right or wrong, it was about getting her the help she needed before she ended up dead. She laughed me off. I threatened to call her mother. She blanked me. I told her mother, who laughed and put Toby on the phone. I told Toby, who said it wasn't the first time he'd warned me. What did I expect? I called the hospital back. She said she'd be fine if she drank loads of water. I had a go at him and told him she died because of he wouldn't get someone out here, then it was on him, not me, that I'd find him and I'd fuck him up. It was probably the wrong way to deal with things, but I was also in a bit of an unusual situation. I saw our neighbour again, Jim, and asked him what he would do. He spoke to her for about an hour and she still wouldn't go to the hospital. Ironically, she was scared they would sedate her. I'd been chatting to someone called Malona online for the past 2 weeks. She was a random name that stuck out on the game MJ played the majority of the time, and so I'd created an account and got talking. She had a decent sense of humour, and seemed as unhappy at the absurdity of the world as I was. It was nice to be able to just talk rubbish and not be judged for it. I hadn't mentioned MJ other than to say I was in a relationship with someone. However, I couldn't take it anymore after what MJ had done, so I broke down, told Malona everything from start to finish. I was terrified MJ might have a keylogger, to find I'd told someone everything. But I'd had to in case that one day she did kill herself and they thought that I'd done it. Why wouldn't they? My father did kill my mother. It can't have been more than a month had gone by, with Malona helping keep my brain in gear. I was telling David more and more, but not about the violence, just about the abuse in general. Malona was a godsend at this time, and without her I'd never have had the courage to open up to David. When MJ came out of the bathroom in a nightdress mid-morning, she said, "I'm bleeding." She was on the pill and had been since I'd known her, so she shouldn't be bleeding. However, she also had a supply of Tampax in the wardrobe. I recommended she put one in and call a doctor. She said she had, but she'd gone through several in no time and was scared. She was scared of saying anything in case she had to go to hospital. I started talking to Malona, seeing if she could see what was going to happen. Maybe I could get a female's advice. She said get her to hospital. I told MJ she needed to go. She ran to the bathroom and locked the door. She screamed she wasn't going and that I couldn't make her. I didn't even leave my chair. I carried on talking to Malona. About half an hour later she came out. "Clean me. I feel disgusting." I was at the end of my rope. "You going to hospital?" I asked with no emotion. "No, I don't need it. I'm fine." "You don't go, I don't help you," I said, turning back to the PC. I didn't even see her move. She caught me twice in the temple. They weren't slaps. The second one knocked me off the chair. I stood up and raised my arm. I stopped myself 2 inches from her face. She flinched back and I walked into the kitchen and hit the fridge, leaving a dent in it. "Enough!" I shouted. "Hit me again and that'll be your face," I said, pointing at the fridge. "Now fuck off!" I added, and for once, I actually wasn't calm when I was in a situation. My heart was going nuts, and I was shaking like I seriously wanted to tear somebody in half. I sat back down as she shuffled into the bedroom crying. I had a smoke and called the hospital to explain everything, including the loss of blood and trails she was leaving wherever she walked. The guy told me she needs a scan and it had to be done at the hospital. Whilst on the phone, MJ returned. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Getting you some help, seeing as you won't do it yourself," I replied, pointing to the phone. "I've taken pills," she said, chucking an empty sleeve of coke-holdable at me. I was used to her lying, but I never could take the chance. She knew it. This was just another form of control. I kept the guy on the phone and checked the bedroom. There was Sumontal and coke-holdable empty as well as paracetamol. He said he couldn't advise me on the phone but would send an ambulance. For the next hour, Mr. Polite had vanished. "Sit down, drink this." I stood in front of her with a beaker of water. "No, who do you think you are?" she said, pushing my chest. "Go on, bitch, hit me, I fucking dare you. I've had enough of your shit. You're gonna drink this or I'm gonna ram it down your fucking throat. Do you hear me?" She was silent. She'd never seen me like that before, and wasn't sure whether to test me or not. I wasn't giving her time to figure it out. "Drink!" I said, handing her the beaker. She downed it, and I got another, and another. After 4, I said, "Right, next time you take an overdose, next time you threaten to take an overdose, next time there's one too many pills missing from that box, I'm out the door. Drink!" She did, but my blood had started to boil. "Next time you hit me, I'm out the door. Drink!" "Your health is your problem, not mine. I help because I choose to. I don't have to. There's a difference. If you don't help you, I won't help you. Drink!" She tried arguing with me, but each time I cut her off. "I don't care. I've said my piece. Drink up." I must have said, "I don't care. I've said my piece. Drink up," 20 times before she actually got that I wasn't going to listen to her crap anymore. It took 2 days of repeating myself in this vein for her to be with it again, and kept her drinking pretty much constantly. She still refused to go to the hospital. The hospital was saying a scan couldn't be done at home, so the only avenue I had was that they were indirectly refusing her medical treatment, which was due to her condition, tantamount to intentional infliction of emotional distress. At a minimum, at a maximum, they were endangering a human life by negligence. The hospital quite likely wasn't having any of it. However, I couldn't have her bleed out in front of me, and I couldn't stop the bleeding. I called a bluff whilst I was on phone to the hospital. "Sorry, Mr. Daly, I'm about to do my rounds. I'm sorry that I can't help NJ unless she comes in," he said. "That's fine, I'm calling to let you know I'll be there in about 2 hours with a newspaper crew and a pair of handcuffs. Let me know how you do your rounds with me handcuffed to you, because I've had enough. She needs treatment. If you don't give it to her, I'll give you enough bad publicity to bring your career to an end. Your move. You've got 1 hour." I hung up and hoped for the best. We received a call 20 minutes later informing us that a car was being sent out with 2 people with a mobile scanner in it. It wasn't the norm, but they'd happily make an exception on this occasion. I thanked them profusely. MJ looked at me like she was somehow entitled to special treatment. The medics were absolutely brilliant. They took her blood and gave her a scan. They ruled out toxic shock syndrome and said it was just a reaction to her contraceptive, which she'd apparently changed recently. I couldn't fault them all. She asked me to make her appointment at the clinic. I told her to do it herself, but that I'd go with her when she did. Malona and I had started talking more and more about ourselves rather than the online game we were playing. I hinted my PC potentially being keylogged, and she showed me ways to check if it had been tampered with. I eventually told her everything about MJ, and she said I should leave. I remember crying at the PC one night, hoping MJ wouldn't come in to find me upset. She'd asked what was wrong. The only thing that was wrong was that someone had validated my experience. Malona said, I understand what you're going through a world of shit right now. It will be okay. You're right, it's not normal. It's not right, and you should leave. I was trying so hard, so diligently and so often to the point of obsession not to turn into my father. I'd inadvertently found myself becoming my mother. Malona's help was amazing. It meant I had somewhere I could be me, totally me, without any fake face or ego. MJ realised pretty quickly that I wasn't going to do everything for her anymore. She started going to see a therapist I'd arranged for her. She drove every week, and it was great, because although she had insisted I wait outside the room, I could go further away and have an whole hour to myself. I used to sit outside on the wooden bench, but I was somehow more free. The therapist was really good. She was a cute blonde lady who got MJ to the point where she could question herself and try and figure out where her negative thoughts were coming from. It was a hard time for her, but she was doing well with it. She had bouts of tears, but it was normal, not like she'd go into a blazing rage or anything. We made it a routine to walk down the road together daily, so she got some fresh air regardless of the agoraphobia. I'd started working from home on a website that allowed me to take calls and get paid for sending emails. It wasn't great, but it meant I had a reason to have time for me, and I was given advice over the phone. Graham still hadn't shown his face, and the spiritual side had been dead for over 4 years. I meditated, but nothing like it used to occur with Alan or Graham. I should never have left Manchester. Not for Graham, but because I was unhappy and lonely with MJ. I tried dabbling with runes and tarot and had no luck. I'd go to the library and get the maximum books out on different spiritual methods and work my way through each. I digested them like metaphysical sponges, from chakras to alternate realities. Nothing, nada, zilch. I didn't like the idea of setting myself up as a medium. It wouldn't be true. They speak to dead people. Me, I just had feelings about things that usually turned out to be accurate. Well, they used to. I was trying to find out where I belonged and how much I could connect with something that made me feel good, but I wanted to test it in an accurate and informed manner, not one where it made money and people paid to hear a load of rubbish. I couldn't practice on people I knew, so I set up a free account, and I set the price to 0. My website said specifically I wanted no information other than which of the 5 spreads they would choose from on my page. Where I did my first and sat down, I turned over 5 cards. I never used the silly little book that comes with these things. I simply imagined I became the other person, and then I turned a card over. I typed out what I saw. More often than not, I forgot the reading as soon as I'd done it. In this instance, I remember clearly mentioning a woman with a sore wrist, but not much else. I waited for the feedback to be terrible. I waited for me to be totally crazy. I waited to discover it was someone having a laugh with me, and I was so off base it was appalling. Instead, 2 days later, I got 5-star feedback and informed me he was surprised because most of the people he'd been to didn't have half the skill he thought I had. He specifically mentioned his relative's arm. Turned out it had been broken, and in the end I had over 90% of 5-star feedbacks. MJ and I were getting ourselves back into some kind of order, where we at least had a mutual respect of sorts. I was comfortable that she wasn't going crazy if I used the phone, so I called my aunt. "How's the kids?" I asked her after initial introductions. These were the days before caller ID. She broke down crying. "Leah's dead. Sorry, I didn't have your number. You missed the funeral." I used to babysit her. She was Clive's daughter. I was immediately angry with the psychic sound. How could I have this awareness for people about beating fear, about love, yet not be told my cousin was going to take painkillers and fall asleep in the bath? "No, not possible. Fuck off, it's a wind-up," I asked in total shock. I hung up. "Fuck you, don't talk to me, fuck you," I said, looking around, feeling my psychic side open up and then me close it back down again and blocking it out. I played around with the psychic stuff for months. In part, I tried to calm my thoughts. Meditation helped greatly. In other parts, to see how far I could push it. What was reality? Besides, it helped calm my mind when all that was whizzing around me was care placement stuff. I'd had huge dealings with social services about my care folder because initially they couldn't find it. I told them it was probably down the salt mines with the court records in Winsford, but they became more cautious, thinking I was going to the newspapers about the several errors they'd made in regard to the care that they'd given me. I told them several times it was purely for my use, however they insisted on taking months to reply, and then missing deadlines because it hadn't been edited. It arrived over a year after I'd requested it. However, with that and the coroner's report, I was able to piece together exactly how my mum was killed. For years I'd seen her in my head covered in blood in a white dress with numerous stab marks on her throat cut. I never told anyone, but I used to see this when I was in care. I'd see it as though she was walking past my bedroom door, or by my bed. I'd see it in the street or in school, and as I'd got older, I'd learnt to tell her to fuck off. My own mum, I'd learnt to tell her to fuck off, because I knew she wasn't real. It worked, but it didn't bring me any peace. There was never any menace in these visions, you understand, just a case of her being there, and the injuries my brain had concocted to say that's what she'd sustained. She hadn't. I sat on the sofa, it was a blue tea seater, and I was chain smoking. There was a small coffee table to my left, and I had the box of paperwork open in front of me, as MJ passed me the envelope simply marked, Coroner's Report. Well, open it, MJ said. Changes nothing, I said, although my hands were shaking as the envelope was moving. The truth was it would change everything. After everything I'd been through, I'll finally know the truth. But then what would I do? What would I live to achieve after this moment? My family still didn't care. This was just the end of my road in a different form. It'd been years since we'd been in touch. I was certain Jonathan, Jodie and Caroline wanted nothing to do with me. I made 5 smokes and placed them around the ashtray and picked up the letter. MJ stood in the doorway. I shook. Whatever happens, I love you, Mum. I said out loud. My fingers stopped working. I couldn't open it. I handed it to MJ. Don't read it, just open it, I said. She handed it straight back and I was crying before I'd even taken the letter from the envelope. I let the tears fall whilst I read it and then reread it. My mother was found prone on the floor of the Wizard Caravan site in Alderley Edge, Cheshire, with 2 stab wounds to her chest. One on the left-hand side going through her ribs and another on her right going through her ribs. A 4-inch serrated-edge kitchen knife was found embedded in the floor beside her. Once I'd looked up every medical term from why a cadaver requires the anal temperature to be taken to what prone meant, I finally put together that my mother and Wenzel were arguing the night before, because Mum wanted to take the children and leave to be with our aunt. However, Wenzel, in true fashion, talked her around into staying the night that they would go in the morning, or found a way to force her to stay. Either way, she was found in her pyjamas, stabbed twice in the chest, with no foreign substances in her body and no sign of a struggle. She was beneath a duvet. Wenzel's version of an argument and them stabbing her did not stand up. It is my true belief my mum was stabbed to death while she slept, and the cause of death, although documented by the coroner as a stab wound to the chest, would probably be best described as choking to death in your own blood, as the knife had gone through certain arteries. I wasn't sure if I found this a relief to know or not, but I can tell you now I've not once seen her covered in blood with numerous stab wounds and her throat cut any more. Not once. I wasn't angry with Wenzel. I'd learnt a long time ago that anger only hurt me. It didn't do anything to anyone else. I did immediately look up the law though. Unfortunately, it turns out a person cannot be charged for the same crime twice, and in this case he was charged for murder and got manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, and therefore can't be tried for murder or manslaughter unless there is new and conclusive evidence relative to the case. The courts presumably know everything that I do. They definitely knew about the coroner's report and the phone call to her aunt, in which case they've simply bought Wenzel's bullshit as the only person able to explain it. Is it true he was stressed? Of course. Is it true he may have had anger-related issues? Possibly. Is it true he didn't know what he was doing when he stabbed his wife to death in her sleep after getting her housed in a place with several caves which just happened to be ideal for hiding a body? I doubt it. I'm more of the belief he was wanting to bang another woman, probably the one he ended up seeing at the hospital ironically, and couldn't get rid of Mum. When he couldn't make it look like an overdose or an accident as he'd tried previously, he thought he'd kill her and take her to the caves. However, after stabbing her twice, he saw the amount of blood and panicked, at which point he went for a long walk, judging by the rigor mortis, before handing himself in, none of which could have occurred by chance. Thank you, I said as the cold night air hit my face and I dried the tears. I had my head out the flat window and was chain smoking, but somehow it helped. It stung, but I needed to let go. Thank you. I just sobbed because I knew. I was aware the new knowledge of Mum choking on her own blood would take its toll on me in some way. I knew I'd have to deal with that battle when it came, and I knew I had absolutely no idea where I was going from here. But I knew I was going somewhere. I'm Tracy Daly. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.